It came on.
There's Brian. He just joined.
Okay. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning.
We're just
How
about
you doing this morning, Bob?
pretty good. So I think we're ready to roll here. And
Okay.
we'll start with your spiel.
Yes, sir. Welcome everybody to the Woodlands Water Mud number 1 Board of Directors meeting for Tuesday, March the 16th, 2021. Appreciate everyone being able to attend the remote meeting today. As in prior meetings, I'll briefly go through the meeting procedures as well as perform a roll call. To begin with, I need to remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded as required by the Texas Open Meetings Act. Second, please remember to state your name before you speak, include the making of any motions. When you're not speaking, please be sure to mute your line. Third, we will continue the practice of having a roll call to vote on each motion. After a motion has been made and seconded, please wait until you hear your name called and then respond with a verbal aye, a nay, or an abstention. Finally, we need to identify each person who's joining the meeting remotely today so we can accurately reflect the attendance in the minutes of the meeting. I'll perform a roll call for the board members, followed by staff and consultants. When you hear your name or your company called, please respond by indicating that you're present in the meeting. Likewise, if you need to leave the meeting before it adjourns, please announce that you're doing so before you disconnect. Once I've completed the roll call for directors, staff, and consultants, I'll ask for any members of the public to identify themselves for the record. So starting with our board of directors on the roll call, Bob Lilac,
Here.
Walt Leszewski,
Walt here.
Ken Dorland,
Here.
Jeff Long,
Partly here.
Hartley McIntosh.
Present.
Okay, that completes the roll call for our directors. We'll move on to Woodlands Water staff. Jim Stinson,
Present.
Mike Mooney,
Present.
Barney Bourgeois,
Present.
Jeannie Scott,
I'm here.
Shelley Lawson Kennedy.
Present.
Any other members of Woodlands Water that I have not called? Okay, we'll move on to San Jacinto River Authority staff. Ron Kelly,
Present.
Chris Meeks,
Present.
Matt Corley.
Present.
Any other members of the River Authority staff in the meeting?
Yes, Brian, this is Aaron Schindewald.
Okay, anyone else from the River Authority? If not, we'll move on to Mud One consultants. Do we have any Mud One consultants in the meeting today? If not, we'll move on to members of the public. Do we have any members of the public present in the meeting? We need to identify you for the record as well.
Yeah, this is Paul Brown.
Arthur Bredehoff, resident.
Any
Paul,
other members of the public? If not, I believe that will conclude the roll call. I'll go ahead and hand it back over to you, Bob, to begin the agenda.
thank you. Paul, I would like to welcome you, as well as Arthur, to our board meeting. And we'll start off with Arthur. You said you have some comments.
Bob, thanks very much. I'm here as a resident to talk about an option A and B. In option A, I want to thank all the folks that are both residents, elected directors, Woodland staff, SJRA staff that's been working with GMA 14 and Lone Star Board of Directors and the Lone Star Executive Director on trying to get reasonable DFCs in place for our community so that we can recharge our aquifers and mitigate and reduce subsidence going forward for both current residents and future generations. Option B is something I think that WWA trustees and MUD directors can take action on for fiscal year 22-23. And what option B is, the work, and it's on your agenda today, is the work that was done by the subcommittee on groundwater surface water back in 2020. And at that time, I was the chair of that subcommittee. And we put in a budgetary guideline of moving groundwater surface water from the current 35% surface water and 65% groundwater to a 50-50, because it is a positive step that we can take along with what actions are trying to be undertaken with GMA 14. And SJRA gave us a static well level study that was done from 2010 to 2020 in our December WWA meeting. And it's clear in the charts and the data that when we were at a 65% surface water and at 50% surface water, the aquifers were recharging and subsidence was being mitigated. And then we moved in 2019-20 to 35%, and we could see the data showing that the aquifers are starting to take that decline again. So I would ask the support of Mud One and ask that their trustee at the next meeting talk about the ratio of groundwater surface water, and ask the budget committee for fiscal year 22-23 to move to a 50-50 groundwater surface water. Also, to have the budget committee to review along with SJRA and Woodland staff for budget year 23-24 to move to a 65% surface water and a 35% groundwater. That step will also help further recharge the aquifers and mitigate subsidence. Now, in your packet, Ron Kelling and his staff has done a good job to demonstrate what the impact is on a 50-50 for fiscal year 22-23, because we always have to be concerned about our customers. At the end of the day, the customer pays for all of these adjustments to have a better community and also to preserve our limited natural resource called water. And it's in your packet, you'll read that study, and it's approximately $2 and I think 73 cents additional per month per household or connection. So with that, I really thank you guys for the time. It's good to be here, and really appreciate the support that can be generated from Mud One as it relates to this item on your agenda. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Arthur. And many of us feel similarly that we need to do all we can to stabilize the decline in our aquifers. And I felt really comfortable that at 65-35 that can be accomplished. And I guess I'm a little surprised, but also glad to hear that even a 50-50 ratio will do that. But one thing, my personal feeling is I don't want to use what we do as a license to permit others to increase their groundwater pumping, which would certainly undercut what we're trying to do here. And I guess we'll take that up a little bit later. So appreciate very much your comments, and I think we'll take this up a little later in our meeting. Paul, do you have anything you want to add or say?
Not to Art. I can never out-talk Art. What I would like to talk about is basically address, the almost 50 years that this community has been in effect. Most of it has been spent, or a lot of it's been spent building, and we're pretty much built out. And I'd like to talk about infrastructure and infrastructure renewal as we go forward. San Jacinto River Authority and you guys may see it today, I don't know. A year ago, they gave us a 10-year project plan, for asset management or infrastructure, okay? That was in March of 2020. A year later now, they've given us much more specifics, okay, which give us a better insight into exactly what the projects are. Also into what this first tranche of money is, which is it's a 10-year plan, and it's about, I'm going to round out $200 million bucks. A nice round small number. There's a couple of things here that I'm concerned about. First of all, I think Ron's folks have done a good job, and it's a great start. But I think we as an organization across all the MUDs and at the Woodlands Water need to be thinking about this really as a rolling, the establishment of a rolling plan or process within a process with committed funding outside of the one-year budget process. Um, One of the things that isn't addressed in this document and probably shouldn't be, it's on our side, I think, is, although they have a component, is funding. And who should that, who's going to pay for this? And clearly it's our customers, right? The unit cost that's going to be reflected in our water bills clearly is most likely going to go up for a lot of different reasons, but certainly with infrastructure, ultimately the consumer of our services bears the brunt of that expense, right? I guess I wonder, what's the price to our customers in rate yearly over the initial 10 years of this plan? Okay, I just throw that out there because I certainly don't know what that is. I've not seen a projection, and maybe I've missed it, but I've not seen a projection. I think it's a critical component because really what we're selling, I believe, is we're trying to address, on one hand is infrastructure, the other hand is marketing. And to that end, we're going to have customers who may, if the number is higher and significantly higher over time, start to raise issues around the price of water. And I think one of the things we should consider is taking a little bit different approach, just like we did with the GRP almost 10 years ago. I think it was about 10 years ago. We probably should consider, breaking out the cost of infrastructure as a fee that gets passed to customers. So they understand in a different way and can see in a different way where their money is going, where their rate is going. And I just want to throw that out there as an idea. I think it bears consideration. I think customers want transparency. And when we don't give transparency, we have a room full of people. I also, while I'm sure that Ron's folks have done a great job, I think the number clearly is to some extent understated. And we need to rectify that, I think, and unify that into this separate plan outside our normal budget, budget plan. And that is, right now we have a discussion going on, hopefully still, about our wastewater plants, and that number is significant, and actually it's probably significantly higher than the 10-year plan. We have a situation which I've just heard about that's not in the plan, and that's called, a problem with our dam. Now I know that doesn't affect all the MUDs, but it is it's a major possible expense, somewhere above 7 figures from what I understand. All right. And, along with this, and why I think we need two processes is we need to have, some commitment to funding over what I would expect would be at least 5 years out. And I don't know exactly how that should happen, but I think it really needs to happen so that the community and our support network in San Jacinto knows what they're running at, knows what they have to run and what they can do. I also think this rolling plan needs to add plans as we move forward through every year. Ron tells me we have $50 million of, $1 billion of underlying assets here in the Woodlands around water and sewerage, So we're talking about above ground and below ground. That roughly $200 million in the first 10 years really only addresses 20% of that infrastructure. And I've never really seen a timing chart on that. And, I don't know whether that's, how complete that listing is. I hope that it is very accurate and very complete. But I suspect that we're going to need to have a system to add to this list. So what do we spend in the 11th year, the 12th year, the 13th year? And then, you know, again, price to our customers in rate yearly over the next 10 years, what's that number going to be? And then how is the perspective of this change in our community from a community being built to a community that is restoring and maintaining infrastructure? How are these plans going to be socialized to all the MUD directors in the Woodlands? And then finally, my last comment really has to go to urgency and effectiveness. I attended the Woodlands Water meeting this past, I guess it was last week. And I did have some concerns as I listened. And one of those concerns is that for at least the last 5 months, because I touched base on what's going on there, you know, we have been considering allocating and approving apparently upwards of $5 million to study infrastructure, specific infrastructure, okay? Our you know, sewage plant. And we still do not have a decision on that. And I don't know that we can continue to operate, you know, in a situation where it takes 5 or more months. Now we're going to move into the 6th month without a decision. I don't know that we can continue to operate that way and be effective, quite frankly. I think we need to stop worrying about big numbers. We're a big number community. We are one of the wealthiest communities in Texas. We are one of the wealthiest communities, probably, if you rank them, in America. And I think we really do need to take a look at our perspective on how we do these things. I thank you for your time, and always good to talk to you folks.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. Any of our board members have comments?
Bob, this is Jeff. Yeah, I have maybe several to that, but I'll reserve some of them when we get to the budget item. Hopefully Arthur will hang around. I've got some stuff for him to maybe have him clarify a little bit. Yeah, and the capital stuff, we've got another place on the agenda that's talking a little bit about that from one of the reports. So I'll kind of hold my powder till then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to item agenda number 3. Mike, news this month.
This is Mike. Yeah, we talked to Mr. and Mrs. Billings late yesterday. They're still basically what they're calling it is their bank is, quote, working on it in terms of registering the note with the county. Mr. and Mrs. Billings are really starting to get kind of irritated. They're thinking about if they're going to refinance their property, that they would put the easement in the refinance documents if that's possible. So right now we're still delayed, waiting on the homeowner, basically.
Okay. Same story basically as last month.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's move on to item number 4. Requests for adjustments, and we're not talking about sewers at this one, but water. Mike and Jeannie,
This is Jeannie, and I don't have any.
And this is Mike. Nothing this month from me either.
Okay, well, that's good news. So let's move on to the consent agenda. I would like to move the Jacinto report out of the consent agenda if nobody objects. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion that we
Move to approve the consent calendar. This is Jeff.
do. We have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Brian, call the roll.
This is Brian. If there's no further discussion on the motion in the second, we'll call the vote. Bob, how do you vote?
Aye.
Walt,
Walt, aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Jeff,
Yes.
Hartley?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, then we'll now take up item 9, the San Jacinto report. Chris, Aaron, who's,
Chris will cover this.
okay,
So as you go through the report, just to let you know, on page 2, the second page of the report, you can see the blend ratio so far this fiscal year, which is September 1st to current, is 47% groundwater, 53% surface water. We are shooting for an annual average of 65% groundwater to 35% surface water, but ran a little bit high on surface water during the winter time. So we'll catch back up to what the budget was.
Chris, I missed that word. It cut out. You said we ran a little higher on surface water. For what reason?
During the winter, our groundwater permit, we did not want to go over our groundwater allocation from Lone Star, so we tried to balance it with more surface water.
Okay, so you ended up with 53%.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So as you go through, you can see that right now I'm still on page 2. You can see that in February, we did have more water usage than previous years, mostly due to at this point, potentially line breaks and so on and so forth. Moving to the next page, no wastewater violations. You can see our KPIs there on section 3. Those will be updated. The financial ones will be updated later next month. Then we move to financials. After that, we have the projects. Everything is going according to schedule. Most everything is on track unless it is on hold for the potential feasibility study. You can see on the projects, the second project is the Bear Branch Gravity Main project. That project is in the final stages, restoration and paperwork. And then we can close that project down. That was a large project that came in under budget and under schedule. So are there any questions I can answer for anybody?
anything new on the legal side with all the lawsuits?
That would be a Mr. Kelling item.
Ron?
Nothing new.
No
Just
changes?
slowly.
What's on the horizon? What, any court case?
The Beaumont Ninth Court of Appeals should be hearing, we hope, the case about the immunity issue with Conroe, that as a entity, as a public entity, we can't sue. Other public entities have signed contracts with us because the contract, a 40-year contract, doesn't state the rate that they would pay for the next 40 years, which is not how water supply contracts are done in the state of Texas. That's being heard at the Ninth Court of Appeals. We hope within the next 3 to 6 months. The other item that's more than likely sitting out there is the breach of contract case with Simon in Quadvest and Woodland Oaks. They, as you know, they quit paying. It's supposed to go to court in November or December, which means we should be having depositions and discovery sometime starting soon. And the last one would be the EDJA case. We were awarded summary judgment at the trial court in Travis County. Of course, Conroe immediately appealed directly to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, and bypassing the appellate court. Supreme Court is looking at the briefings that have been filed to see if they're willing to accept it or to send it to the appellate court.
Sorry, I asked.
I'm sorry, I have that all to memory.
Okay, thank you all. We'll move on to item number 10. Ron, you want to talk about our goings on with GMA 14?
The only thing really to report is at the next GMA 14 meeting, nothing was decided at the previous one in February. They took no vote at the request of Lone Star so that Lone Star could meet with their stakeholders. The meeting was originally moved to March the 31st, but has now been moved to April the 9th. So anybody who is watching or monitoring those things, the next GMA 14 meeting will be April the 9th. And we anticipate that the 5 members of the GMA 14 will vote on a DFC, a desired future condition, at that time. We do not expect it to be a unanimous vote.
Well, as everyone saw in our packet, I did speak at the GMA 14 meeting. I don't know what good it does or did, but at least we are continuing to voice our opinions. And at this time, I will add that the Township Future hopes to present a Zoom meeting on subsidence. And there's also some thought about maybe trying to get a petition for more support to help convince GMA 14 that the Lone Star has got to be reasonable in their DFCs. So that's all I can say on that at this time. Does anybody else have any comments on item number 10?
Well, yeah, let me follow up. It has a little bit to do with what Arthur said, Bob. Obviously the DFC's final disposition and language is very, very important. But one of the things that either someone from GMA 14 or the city of Conroe said, I can't remember who now, but the gist of the comment was, oh, it would be great for the Woodlands to go ahead and do a 50-50 blend or even a 65 surface 35 blend because they should pay for it. They got plenty of money, let them pay for it. And then the rest of us can pump all we want at a lower cost for everyone and life goes on. So the basic attitude was, yeah, let them use all surface water, whatever. And then we will just pump till our heart's content was what I gathered from his comment. And I think that's dangerous thinking. We've got to share in this, and I think the DFC final statements need to be such that that's not what actually happens for our entire county. I think everyone needs to participate as much as possible in getting rid of this potential future subsidence that we're faced with. Anyway, I think Arthur may know that was partly their attitude.
To be continued.
Yeah.
Any more comments? Okay. Well, I think, have we covered item 11? Chris and Ron, anything more you want to say on that?
No, we haven't. If I may, I think Arthur made a very good leeway or lead into this agenda item. As Arthur mentioned, the Surface Water Groundwater Committee made a recommendation, and it's in your packets on page 24 of your packet. It's a memo dated May the 13th. And one of the recommendations they have in there is to annually look at the goal of going to of surface water conversion and what those ratios should be. So what we did is on the next page, which is page 25 of your packet, we made a simple one-page calculation to show you what that impact would be. our budget, and this is based on fiscal year budget 21. We are currently in the process of working on our 22 budget. So I don't have those numbers yet. So I based everything on 21. And based in fiscal year 21, the Woodlands, everybody that receives surface water from us is on a 35% surface water, 65% groundwater blend, so that we can operate the plant as low as we can to keep the cost down at 12 MGD. For the Woodlands, that the blended water rate that you pass on for this to your customers is $2.88 per 1,000 gallons. That's not what we charge the MUDs, but that's what the MUDs pass on to their customers. So the average residential customer in the Woodlands who uses 10,000 gallons of water per month, that pass through, that 288 is equal to $28.80 a month. If we were to go to a 50-50 blend and basically provide another 2.5 million gallons of surface water to the Woodlands, there's no rate that's set up for that right now in our rate structure, and we can't just bump it up, because then that would increase the cost for everybody. You know, I guess to Mr. Long's point, that would increase everybody's cost. And so, and you know, because that's how the contract was set up. So if we just took the cost of increasing 2.5 MGD and basically charge that to the Woodlands, which is basically power costs, water cost, and chemical costs. That's primarily it. There's no other cost involved in that. It's just to ramp it up to give the Woodlands an extra 2.5 MGD. That resulting cost to the residential customer that has 10,000 gallons would be around $31.10 a month. So the increase would be about $2.30 a month. So for the Woodlands to increase from a 35% surface water blend to a 50% surface water blend, it would be on average for customers who have 10,000 gallons around $2.30 a month for every month. And so that's what that shows. And so that, hopefully that responds to the question and the intent of the memo of the Groundwater Surface Water Committee. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody may have.
So that's about half the cost of a Starbucks coffee every month.
You can relate it to a cost of a lot of things, yes.
Any further discussions or comments?
And I guess part of this is we will be asking the trustees to vote on this, I guess in April, because we are trying to prepare our budgets for fiscal year 22. And for the Woodlands Division and for the GRP Division, we kind of need to know if we're going to need to provide this extra 2.5 MGD or not. And so we're going to be seeking guidance, I guess is a better term, from the trustees in April.
So Hartley, do we need to pass a motion to give you support for what Ron talked about here?
No, you don't.
Okay. Well, I think we definitely support the SJRA on these, and unless anybody has any objections, we'll move ahead with that. So let's move on to item number 12, attorney's report. Brian?
This is Brian. A few things on the attorney's report today. One, as I'm sure all of you know, the governor did lift the mandatory mask restrictions and the business restrictions effective as of last Wednesday, March the 10th. Some questions came up about whether that action by the governor impacted at all the disaster proclamation that suspended the in-person meeting requirements under the Texas Open Meetings Act. We have been in contact with the governor's office, and have confirmed that last week's actions do not impact his disaster proclamation and that we remain in a remote meeting environment. So that has not changed. If and when it does, we'll of course let you know, but right now it's status quo in terms of the meeting environment. Second, you should have received by email a clean and redline version of the construction 10 con 10 policy. We've talked briefly over the last couple of months about dusting that policy off to see if there were any necessary updates to the form since the last time it had been updated was in 95. MUD 1 doesn't have any current or upcoming developer projects that I'm aware of, but since it is a uniform policy, we did want to bring it before all of the MUD boards. Today, it's just for discussion. Next month, we'll put it on as a potential action item. You'll see on the red line version what the specific changes were. Nothing much of a substantive nature. Most of it was updating some of the text that essentially repeated what some of the statutory requirements were. And I went ahead and changed that to actually referencing the statutes themselves because those can get modified from time to time. And so to prevent us from having an outdated policy whenever the legislature modifies the administrative code or the water code, as the case may be, then this policy would automatically update to track the new statutory language. So that's the main purpose of what we were trying to do with updates. But happy to answer any questions you may have. Again, this is not an action item for today, just for discussion.
Well, building on that conversation, I know Director Long last month would like to see us go back to in-person meetings. And in discussions I've had with General Manager Stinson, he would like all MUDs to make that decision and not just do it one at a time. Jim, do you think we could shoot for maybe June? Do you think that's a realistic target of trying to get back to meeting in person?
I do think so. Again, my suggestion and hope is that it would be, the decision could be consistent and unanimous among all of the MUDs, and I will work towards a June target date, yes.
Okay, is any director have any comments on shooting for June or later? If there are no objections, yeah, I appreciate it, Jim. If you could take the temperature of the other MUDs, figuratively speaking, to see if we could shoot for June. To go back to in-person meetings. Okay, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, modifying sewer volume. Jim, you want to talk about that?
Yes, what I had sent out a memo following the free event in February that we were calculating water bills, and we were going to calculate, well, first of all, we recalculate the maximum sewer volume for each of our residential customers every year in February. We use meter readings for December, January, and February, and then retake that average, and that average number of water volume is the maximum sewer volume going for the coming year. With the large number of residential pipe breaks and leaks, we didn't think it was appropriate to use those February meter readings to calculate the maximum sewer volume. So we stuck with the same sewer volume for each customer that was calculated last February. And we are recommending that we carry that number forward for this full year to try to be fair to those residents that had leaks in their home. I don't think it will impact your budget in any way significantly. Most sewer volume calculations don't change that much from home to home each year. I think the River Authority budgeted a flat sewer volume as far as treatment, what they expect to treat for this next fiscal year. And we send them the sewer volume that they charge us. So it's kind of a zero sum in some ways game. And we're just needing your authorization to continue to use that maximum sewer volume last year for each resident going forward this year.
The only question I have, Jim, is if a resident says, well, I use less water in December, January, and February than I did the year before, but you're charging me a higher sewer rate. How do we deal with a question like that?
If we get somebody that says that and we look at their usage, we can adjust it on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. Okay, I will make the motion that we approve using last year's sewer volume as a basis for the sewer rate.
Yeah, this is Director McIntosh. I think your motion should probably read, you move to suspend the rules to allow current sewer volume to be utilized for another year.
I like that.
That needs a second, and I would be glad to second it, but it requires a 2/3 majority to pass.
I like your wording better than mine, Hartley, so I will go for that. And Hartley is also seconded. Any further discussion? Brian, you want to call a vote?
This is Brian. If there's no further discussion, we do have a motion and a second, so we'll call the vote. Bob, how do you vote?
Aye.
Walt?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
Jeff?
Yes.
Hartley?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. Moving on to item number 14. Both Neil of Mud 6 and I have some information requests for Woodlands Water. But last month was a bad month for the team because of all the issues going on related to not only the cold weather, but I understand contractors for Tackus busting a lot of water lines. And so they haven't been able to get around to giving us the information. And there's no hurry that we had to have that information by this month. So I'd like to postpone any more discussion on that until next month, in which I'm hopeful that the team studying it, Brooke, Neil, and myself and Walt will have something in writing to present next month. So that's an update on that.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to add, I did have contact with Robert Heineman to see about, any future work or any expansion that the development company would have in Mud 6 and in Mud 1. And he's retired now, so his knowledge was very limited. But I did have a conversation with Jim Carmen, who is the president of Howard Hughes here. And we're setting up a meeting. And he said he'd be more than happy to sit down and discuss any future expansion that they have in both areas. And I told him we were very concerned about the shopping centers, what's going to happen there. So we are making at least some progress that we can try to ascertain what's forthcoming there.
Okay, so you're going to set up a meeting. Can you invite the Mud 6 people to join us? Because I think they might be interested in that as well.
All right, I'll see what I can do on that.
So we could either do that in person or Zoom. I do pay Zoom for an unlimited ability to set up meetings, so keep that in mind. So,
Oh, that's very nice of you.
okay, thank you. Okay, phase 2 study is Matt online? If not,
No, me. Where we're at on the studies is the ILAs have been drafted. And my understanding is they're to go to our board with the MUDs. It should go to SJRA board in April, and that they will come to the MUDs for consideration either in April or in May. And I know, Brian, I know you've been reviewing, and I guess, Jim, you've been reviewing those agreements. Do you have any other items on that?
In the packet on page 27 is a breakdown of what we're estimating the cost would be for each of the MUDs participating. And we're kind of giving 2 scenarios based on the impact of the in-kind contribution from the San Jacinto River Authority. So for MUD 1, anticipated is about 19,000. The worst case would be about 24 or 25,000.
and Humble is definitely in.
Yes, they are contributing a flat $50,000 contribution.
How about the township? Have we talked to the township about ponying up $1.25?
We have not.
Well, I will.
The interlocal is drafted with these entities in mind at this point. If we try to go back and include another entity in it, it may, anyway, it could get delayed and complicated.
Okay, well, why didn't we invite the township to participate in the first place?
We stuck with the same strategy and protocol that we used from the beginning with these MUDs involved. The city of Humble reached out to us and asked to be a part of it. We didn't reach out to them.
Well, I think that's kind of strange that an entity outside of Montgomery County offers to contribute, whereas our township hasn't shown an interest even through the One Water Task Force. I just expressed my disappointment that we don't have anything from them, even if it's a token $5,000 or $10,000. It would have been nice.
I think that's been, Bob, I think that's been presented to them a long time ago. I mean, I think that was one of Reeser's biggest issues was that, that the township wasn't responsible for flooding it all. And that's why they were kind of against it back then.
And then why do we have a task force for?
Well, I mean, that's been the conversation all along. I mean, they can't say, you can't talk to the people down at Creekside or over in Brogan's Point and tell them they were better off now than they were four years ago when Harvey hit.
That's true.
Nothing new.
So, Jim, if
just to emphasize, the city of Humble and Kingwood area would benefit from this drainage improvement. So they see the benefit to it for their community is why they're participating.
Well, I think the Woodlands should see the benefit. There's certain areas that could be greatly affected in a positive way.
And that's the whole purpose of building a retention facility on Spring Creek and making the drainage improvements that were proposed in the phase 1 study. So I don't know, I may just test the waters so if the township were to make a contribution, Jim, that wouldn't be a problem, would it?
No, sir, not at all. I don't need to imply it, but I just to modify our interlocal agreement would be difficult at this point, but we will certainly accept contributions.
Okay, well, since I'm on the One Water Task Force at the next meeting, I will bring that up and see what happens. So nothing ventured, nothing gained. So, anything more on item 15? If not, Jim, do you have anything on the general manager's report?
Yes, sir. A few items. Just to kind of a quick recap of our discussion at the trustee meeting on the wastewater treatment plant consolidation and the request from the San Jacinto River Authority to go ahead and finalize their request for qualifications and begin the scoring of the consultants. That was delayed. I think the center of that delay was around public outreach, stakeholder outreach and communication, in particular with the Woodlands Township. They wanted to see more what that component of the study and the path forward would look like. I have set up a meeting with the San Jacinto River Authority and our staff and the township staff. Well, it's in the process. We think we've got a date to get some feedback from their leadership on this process. The goal is to bring it back to the trustees and hopefully get support and approval at the next meeting to at least get the request for qualifications in and scored, and then bring that contract and that scope of work back to the trustees for further action. SJRA did talk about their 10-year project plan, and just as a reminder, this is reviewed each year. So it's a rolling 10-year project plan. You may recall that we were working with our audit committee on funding options for this when we kind of went in the direction of looking at consolidating wastewater treatment. So the funding options are going to be back on the table with our audit committee over the next couple of months to bring something back to the trustees as a recommendation for how best to fund these projects on a 10-year basis. The information is on the Google Drive for any of the directors to go and look at that, and feel free to give me a call or reach out to Ron Kelling or Chris Meeks with any questions. But right now it's a work in progress to I guess hone the 10-year plan and the funding options for that.
I think we're talking about $500,000 for this wastewater treatment facility study. And I have a concern that, if people are objecting to the erection of an AMI antenna, what will be the reaction of people to realize or we could almost triple the size of wastewater treatment plant number 2 by consolidating it. I'm just wondering if maybe the idea of a pre-feasibility study would be in order versus going ahead with a full $500,000 study. You have any comments on that, Jim or Ron?
It's Director McIntosh. I have comments on that. This whole request went to our audit committee of the WWA Board of Trustees. And 2 months ago, they recommend it be approved at approximately $500,000. And I made the motion to lay it on the table. And then this past meeting, I made the motion to bring it off the table after we had considerable additional information presented over the period of 2 months by San Jacinto River Authority, not only to the audit committee, but to the WWA trustees. There was considerable discussion. Everybody has an idea of what they'd like to do. And so I called the question because my feeling was that San Jacinto River Authority deserves a right to go forward with this study. And I think that the audit committee and San Jacinto River Authority are competent to go forward and know what they're doing. My motion was defeated. So we're back to having another month, a third month, to approve this so it can get started. Hopefully the next WWA meeting, we will be able to have had enough discussion and enough information presented that we can go forward and allow San Jacinto River Authority to put into their budget the amount necessary to initiate this study. And this doesn't say it's going to be done. This is a study, and they will give us the scope of the study here in the next month, and I think we're on track. But everyone's comments are appreciated, and if you have them, they should be recorded so that they can be addressed. And that's my comment.
I would add that, you know, we're looking at spending several $100 million on the wastewater treatment facility upgrade and rehab, no matter which way we go over the next 10 to 30 years. And, you know, spending 500,000 to $1 million on a master plan to give you direction on how best to spend that several $100 million, I think is a wise investment. It's a very small percentage related to the dollar amount that it will be spent, have to be spent on wastewater treatment rehab. So my thought is that it's a prudent way to develop a path and a plan how best to move forward with the wastewater treatment in the Woodlands.
Yeah, I don't think there's any objections, as far as I know, to doing that. It's just committing to a scope of study for areas that may never happen. And again, I bring up the public concern of consolidating everything at one location. If the public will not stand for it, then I don't think we should include it in the study. So my feeling is we need to be a little more comfortable is that we're going to get possibly we won't have public objections to doing that. So my opinion, the public should be brought into this very, very early in the study. So we either can modify the scope of the study to eliminate consolidation, or if people are satisfied that a consolidated facility can be a good neighbor, then we can proceed with that element of the study. So it's just spending money wisely.
This Ron Kelly, could I add something?
Sure.
Regarding your point, Bob, we agree having public input at some level at some point in time is important to this. One of the things, though, before you go to the public, you have to have some information to be able to show them or tell them what they're looking at or what they may agree to or be opposed to, and also the costs. And so one of the things that this feasibility study would do would be better define what plant, we got to remember, plant one is going to have to be basically rebuilt. It's almost 50 years old. It's basically going to have to be rebuilt over the next 20 years anyway, in place. Then 20 years from now, that will have to happen to plant two. What do you want those to look like? And what are the key aspects of that? You know, do you not want to hear it, smell it, or see it? And what is the cost of that? And are you willing to pay for that cost? And it's kind of some of the same issues we're having right now at plant one on the odor control. is you got neighbors who are not happy with the odors that they have around there. But unfortunately, 95% of the Woodlands doesn't even know that that plant maybe is even there, never sees it, never smells it, but they may have to pay for the additional cost so you don't hear it, smell it, or see it. So before we go to the public, we have to have some level of study done to go, this is what we're talking about. The plant would look like X. The plant would cost X dollars and it would raise your rates X amount. Or is that something you're interested in? You know, because if we don't have that basic information and we go to the public and start going, hey, would you like to have an expanded plant at Plant 2? They're gonna go, well, heck no. But you have to first tell them what that looks like and what that is. And to your point, for the rest of the community, why would somebody, we've got to answer the question, not only the people who live around the plants, but the people who never see it, never smell it, never hear it, don't even know it's there. Why, then why their rate has to are going to double their wastewater rate. I mean, so all of that kind of ties in together. And that's why we feel this feasibility study is needed to be able to answer some of those questions to give to the public so that we can get their input.
And I think we're in full agreement. It's just how many decimal places of accuracy do we need to have? And all I can say is that I just have a concern on public reaction. And I think pretty early in the study, we can have some orders of magnitude.
Yeah.
That we can get a better feeling for the public reaction to this. That's all I'm saying.
Sure. And the one last thing is also in this process, we will be receiving qualification statements from consultants to evaluate. And then once we receive those, then we'll develop a detailed scope of work. And from that, then we'll get a detailed cost of this study. And we're not going to be able to have the contract available for y'all to even consider until August. So in April, in May, in June, in July, we will bring to you updates as to additional information that we've developed on scope, on cost, and everything. And so you're going to have a lot of bites at this apple before we even move forward and spend a dime on the study.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on.
I have a few more items.
Okay, sorry, Jim.
That's okay. Just wanted to point out that Montgomery Central Appraisal District has issued a press release that temporary disaster relief is available to homeowners and businesses that incurred damage during the freeze. We've had a request to tour the San Jacinto River Authority skater room where they oversee and monitor the distribution system, the surface water system, and all of the technical aspects. And so we'll be offering that to anyone that wants to go and tour the skater room. We did get a request from the Lone Star Groundwater District to sit down with them. They're reaching out to a number of stakeholders. I understand the township has met with them and a few others. So we're working on setting a meeting with a few of our elected officials with the township director, with Lone Star directors. More on that. I did report on the 2 neighborhoods that are concerned about the AMI poles. I continue to look at options for addressing their concerns. The complete relocation the full analysis on that hasn't been completed, but I hope to have that done at the next round of meetings. I did report that we have struggled significantly with a company called Tachus here in the Woodlands that's installing a higher speed fiber optic in the public right of way. We have about 100 water main service line breaks since January 1. It's reached a point where it's not sustainable. We've had one meeting with them and our staff. I had attended a meeting yesterday at the Montgomery County Commissioner office. We have another meeting with TACUS and our group Thursday, but we have got to come up with something to deal with this in an effective way. We can't continue with the breaks and the dollar amount of the repairs that we are incurring.
Jim, the possibility we could get an injunction of against any further work by TACUS until an agreement is worked out.
That is absolutely.
This is Brian. Yeah, we don't want to get too much into legal strategy in open session, but we are working on all available legal avenues with outside litigation counsel.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks for saving Jim, Brian.
Yes. Woodlands, the water agency budget is allowing for a refund to from its operating reserves to the various MUDs. I think the calculation is in your packet to show what each MUD will be receiving. HARC monthly report is also in your packet if you have any questions on that. And we have several examples of compliment letters that we received during the freeze. It was a very difficult time for our staff to deal with the number of calls and the weather conditions, but it's behind us now, and the compliments were appreciated. And that concludes my report.
You guys did a great job.
I agree. Okay, item number 17, Hartley.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. Are there any questions on, it's a rather extensive report, page 49 through 52. Are there any questions? There being none, that's my report.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 18. Anything to add on the future agenda at this time?
Director McIntosh, I'm still waiting on a review of Con 10 policy to ensure that if there is of property that results in a change in the amount of capacity that has to be purchased by a MUD, that the MUD has an opportunity to approve or disapprove that, just as we did with the original buildings. And in this regard, I might point out that we never got anybody talking to us at all, even from the DSC, about Esprit Academy. Obviously, they have excess capacity in sewer and water from the small nursery that was there. And this is becoming a big problem. And the second thing is, when a nonprofit builds and increases their capacity for water and sewer, we are allowed by state law to collect from them on the basis of their percentage of usage. And we have never done that. In fact, Old Mud 40 set a precedent with Living Word Lutheran Church at Lake Woodlands Drive and New Trails that was spearheaded by the former head of the JPA, Gordon Munson. But we were told that we could have charged them approximately $250,000 when they built that facility to offset. But we wanted to set a precedent that it had not been done for any other church in the Woodlands, and we didn't, or school, and we didn't intend to start it. Mud 40 was about built out at the time, by the way. But back to my original request, we need to take a look at Con 10. And we've been promised that by our general manager, and I'm sure he's working on it. But I want it on the agenda.
This is Brian. So under the attorney's report, one of the items that I covered, Hartley, was the revisions to the Con 10 policy. Those were sent out by email by Shelley, I believe it was yesterday. But those, as I mentioned in the attorney's report, those changes are mainly to update section references for administrative code and water code. The issue that you're talking about in terms of capacity payments and what would be reimbursable or what the developer would have to pay for would really be customizations to the form of the letter, just the basic one-page form of letter for the Con 10 development agreement that's at the back of the policy. And that would be considered on a case-by-case basis. It wouldn't be something that we would be able to globally put into the form of letter. It would be something that a district could consider on a case-by-case basis. We customize these letters, or have customized them over the years for different circumstances based on any number of things. If a developer was going to have to pay for some capacity, if reimbursement was going to come from operating as opposed to coming from bond proceeds, what the payback period would be, et cetera. So that's something that wouldn't be a global change to the form of the policy, but would be something that would be customized on a case-by-case basis based on what the circumstances were.
Yeah, Director McIntosh, my main concern and why I want it on the agenda is that the developer used to own all the property, and when he tell us what he was going to build, that's what he built. Or he withdrew it and brought another Con 10 forward. And I have a couple examples of that happened in Mud 40. What I'm concerned about is the developer doesn't own the property anymore. For example, in the shopping centers, we're making major changes in our shopping centers, and we have no say as a MUD, one way or the other, about what is going to happen, whether we approve or disapprove. And I think we have to go back and institute some kind of situation where not only the DSC gets to approve, but the MUD gets to approve or disapprove.
This is Brian. I mean, I think we can certainly add an item to next month's agenda, and I don't want to get too far out there on what's listed on a posted agenda today. And we can talk about that some more. I think there's going to be some concerns about district powers related to zoning and whatnot, but we can certainly put that on the agenda for further discussion next month.
You know, Hart, you keep bringing up that Esprit School, they changed, as I told you before, they changed the initial land use designation back in 2004. They bought that thing from the United Church of Christ, and that school really opened in September of '99. But then they amended the land use designation in September of 2004. So, I mean, it went through the process.
Yeah, I think the process is fine. The MUD never been informed of anything.
Well, I think Hartley's biggest concern is the future of the shopping centers. Is that correct, Hartley?
Well, my concern is that property is owned now by multiple people, not just the developer. Remember, Mitchell used to control all commercial properties at one time in the Woodlands. to include the village centers, to include every one of the big buildings that had tenants in there for business. And that doesn't happen anymore. We used to have a person come at every MUD meeting from the developer to tell us what was happening. We don't have that anymore. We don't have contents. When there is a change in what's going to happen on that property that we have already approved what was going to be built on that property. Nobody comes back to us and says, you approved this and now we're going to change it. And I don't know what we can do to get back in the act, but I think content might be one way we can do it.
This is Brian. We will have an item on all the MUD agendas next month to consider action and discussion regarding the content. So we can certainly have more discussion on this next month with that. With that posted agenda
adding
item.
on the agenda, discussion concerning changes to content. That's simple. We're not going to have any action on it next month.
Hey, Brian, can you have a copy of the content policy statement in the next packet?
This is Brian. Yes, we'll have what was circulated by email. We can get that put in the packet, clean in a red line version.
And just to clarify or emphasize, you should have a copy in your email. Now, that's another topic for another date. We've got multiple emails for multiple directors, so I don't know which email Shelley sent it to. Everybody should have received a copy yesterday, I think.
Yeah, I received mine.
It's also on the Google Drive.
And before we sign off, President Lilac, I forgot to mention that in your packets is a notice from the Montgomery Central Appraisal District on the upcoming election for board members, and if any of our MUDs are interested in having a special purpose district candidate for that election. As a reminder, the township has put forth a candidate, I think the last two election cycles, and as the situation stands now, they have enough votes to pretty much influence the outcome of that special purpose district candidate. But if anyone is interested in serving as a MUD representative, let us know.
Okay, thank you. There's nothing further. We will now adjourn the meeting, and I'd like to thank everybody for your attendance and your comments, and stay tuned. And we'll
Thank you.
see everybody next month.
Okay.